The airlock hissed open with mechanical finality, releasing Magnus into corridors that reeked of molten metal and something darker. The copper tang of alien blood burned into obsidian stone. His boots struck the deck plating in measured rhythm, each footfall echoing through passages carved from volcanic glass and etched with 10,000 names. The Scarlet War College kept meticulous records of its dead. Magnus flexed his fingers inside tactical gloves, feeling the familiar weight of ceramic armor plates across his chest and shoulders. Shock charges hummed against his ribs. Combat knives rested in magnetic sheaths along his forearms, tools he'd carried through 17 different war zones, each blade notched with kills that had kept him breathing when superior opponents should have torn him apart. The weight felt like coming home. Training Bay 7 waited beyond automated blast doors thick enough to contain fusion detonations. Academy intelligence had been thorough in their briefings. 3 alien females, whose kill counts exceeded most human military divisions. Predators sculpted by evolution into living weapons, now refined through institutional violence into something approaching perfection. Magnus had volunteered to make them better. The bay doors ground apart with hydraulic thunder, venting superheated atmosphere in billowing clouds that tasted of ozone and scorched ceramics. Through the artificial fog, 3 silhouettes materialized like manifestations of controlled lethality. Magnus felt his pulse steady into combat rhythm as he absorbed their positioning, their postures, the minute details that separated survivors from corpses. Scythe held center formation, her crimson scales catching training lights like burnished copper mail. She was built for devastation, compact musculature layered beneath natural armor that could deflect small arms fire. Her claws emerged from fingertips in elegant curves, each talon honed to surgical precision. Academy records claimed 47 confirmed kills in close-quarters combat, most accomplished with nothing. But those magnificent weapons nature had grafted to her hands. Her reptilian eyes tracked Magnus with predatory focus that made his skin prickle with something that wasn't entirely tactical awareness. Beautiful. The thought struck him with unexpected force, deadly and beautiful in ways human aesthetics weren't designed to comprehend. Lyanna commanded the left flank, silver skin seeming to generate its own luminescence in the harsh training illumination. Tall and elegant as a blade, she moved with the fluid certainty of someone who had never missed a target. The Academy's premier sniper. Her kills came from impossible ranges, enemy commanders dropping dead from projectiles fired through atmospheric storms, around gravitational distortions, across void-cold vacuum that should have made ballistics meaningless. Her pale blue eyes were precision instruments, constantly calculating range and windage, and the 1,000 variables that separated perfect shots from noble failures. When those eyes met his, Magnus felt something electric arc between them. Noxara anchored their apex position, obsidian skin reflecting light like polished volcanic glass. Where Scythe embodied fury and Lyanna represented precision, Noxara was inevitability given tactical form. Her mind processed battlefield variables with computational efficiency that reduced chaos to navigable mathematics. She orchestrated perfect kills through pure intellect, turning individual lethality into geometric force multiplication. Academy tactical instructors spoke of her the way other species whispered about natural disasters. Magnus found himself studying the elegant lines of her face, the way intelligence moved behind dark eyes like starlight. 3 apex predators determining whether their new instructor represented threat or prey. Magnus could feel their evaluation like physical weight, alien senses, cataloging his heat signature and chemical emissions, and the dozen unconscious tells that revealed psychological state. He could smell their individual scents now, Scythe's predator musk, that sparked something primal in his hind brain, Lyanna's metallic coolness that reminded him of winter mornings. Noxara's ozone sharpness that crackled with intellectual energy. Academy doctrine emphasized that human instructors were expendable resources. Alien superiority in reflexes, strength, and sensory capability made training relationships inherently hierarchical. These three possessed kill counts that had reduced enemy formations to statistical abstractions. They expected another disposable instructor who would request transfer after discovering the gulf between human limitation and alien capability. Magnus set his equipment case on the deck with deliberate precision. The sound echoed through the chamber like a weapon being primed for action. Your Academy records indicate perfect synchronization in combat scenarios, he said, his voice carrying the flat authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Excellent individual kill ratios. 0 tactical failures in graduation exercises. He opened his equipment case without ceremony, revealing weapons that seemed to absorb ambient light. Blades forged from materials that whispered against their sheaths. Projectile systems with no visible power sources. Electronic devices that hummed with unfamiliar resonance. Your records also indicate you've never faced an opponent who understood your limitations. Scythe's scales bristled like armor plates, shifting into combat configuration. Her claws extended in elegant curves that caught the light like polished steel. Magnus felt her predatory intensity focus on him with laser precision, but his pulse remained steady. He'd faced worse odds with inferior equipment. Human, Scythe's voice carried the controlled menace of barely restrained violence. You will explain that statement before I demonstrate why your species avoided this sector for 3 centuries. Magnus smiled, the expression transforming his scarred features into something genuinely dangerous. The sensation felt like unsheathing a favorite blade. Academy combat doctrine assumes enemy forces will engage according to established alien tactical principles. Your training has been optimized for fighting opponents who share your physiological advantages and cultural blind spots. He selected a curved blade from his case, testing its balance with movements that spoke of long familiarity. The weapon looked wrong somehow, too thin to be effective, designed for purposes that violated conventional understanding of metallurgy and leverage. Magnus felt its weight distribute across his palm like a natural extension of his nervous system. You've never fought someone who thinks like prey. Lyanna shifted position with sniper precision, her pale eyes tracking Magnus with the focused intensity of someone selecting target priorities. Her silver skin reflected the chamber's harsh illumination as she recalibrated threat assessments based on new data. Explain your meaning, she said, each word measured with ballistic precision. Humans developed combat techniques over millions of years as persistence hunters. Magnus replied, moving to the chamber's center with predatory grace that seemed to surprise his alien students. We specialized in killing things bigger, stronger, and faster than ourselves. Your species evolved as apex predators. You're optimized for overwhelming prey through superior capability. Something about his positioning suggested imminent violence contained behind professional control. He could feel their predator instincts responding to signals they couldn't consciously identify. Different evolutionary pressures create different tactical philosophies. You fight to demonstrate superiority. Humans fight to survive against superior opponents. Noxara stepped forward, her obsidian features reflecting the chamber's lighting like a dark mirror. Her analytical mind was clearly processing variables that extended beyond simple tactical instruction. Academy instructors typically demonstrate techniques through controlled exercises, she said with characteristic precision. Will you be following established protocols? Magnus tested the blade's edge against his thumb, watching blood well from the shallow cut. The pain felt clean, familiar. Academy protocols assume instructors are expendable. I'm not Academy personnel. Scythe felt her combat instincts engage like weapons systems coming online. Her heart rate accelerated. Combat neurochemistry flooded her system with predatory clarity. Then what are you? The question emerged as a challenge that carried undertones Magnus found unexpectedly compelling. Magnus met her reptilian eyes, seeing intelligence there that went far beyond simple lethality. His gaze held the flat calm of deep water. I'm the human who survived when 3 full alien assault divisions couldn't. The training chamber's atmosphere shifted like a storm front approaching. Emergency lighting systems activated, bathing everything in harsh red illumination that turned Scythe's scales into burnished copper, made Lyanna's silver skin glow like polished metal, transformed Noxara's obsidian features into something carved from starlight and shadow. Ventilation systems increased air circulation, preparing for combat aerosols. Your graduation trial involves eliminating a fortified position defended by automated systems and disciplined troops. Magnus continued, as if discussing routine logistics. Academy records indicate previous attempts resulted in 73% casualty rates among teams that reached the objective. He holstered the curved blade with practiced efficiency. Unacceptable statistics. We're going to fix that. Lyanna's sniper training manifested as absolute stillness. She'd become a sculpture carved from silver and focused lethality. How? She asked, the single word containing multitudes of tactical possibility. By teaching you to think like something that's been hunted, Magnus replied, and felt the chamber's energy shift again. As 3 apex predators began to understand, they were about to learn warfare from prey that had learned to bite back. The first lesson began at 600 hours, with Magnus leading them through corridors most students never accessed. Deep maintenance tunnels where recycled air tasted of metal shavings and electrical discharge. Abandoned storage sections that echoed with the ghost whispers of deactivated machinery. Spaces where Academy surveillance couldn't penetrate, where emergency lighting cast everything in deep crimson that made shadows dance like living things. Scythe found herself moving differently in these confined spaces. Her usual aggressive advance tactics became liabilities when narrow passages negated her strength advantages, and poor lighting compromised her visual targeting systems. The human moved through these spaces like liquid shadow, his tactical awareness seeming to extend through the walls themselves. Combat effectiveness decreases when environmental factors negate physiological advantages, Magnus explained, his voice carrying easily through the recycled air. Humans learned to use terrain as a force multiplier because we couldn't rely on being bigger or stronger than our enemies. He led them to a junction where 6 tunnels converged, the space barely large enough for Scythe to stand upright. The walls pressed close enough that she could smell the metallic coolness radiating from Lyanna's skin. The ozone sharpness that surrounded Noxara like an electromagnetic field. Standard alien tactics assume battlefield control through superior capability. Human tactics assume you'll be outgunned, outnumbered, and operating with insufficient resources. Noxara examined the junction with tactical interest, her obsidian fingers tracing patterns along the walls that spoke of analytical processing beyond normal parameters. Environmental constraints create operational parameters that favor adaptability over raw capability, she observed. And Magnus felt something warm unfurl in his chest at the precision of her understanding. Exactly, he said, meeting her dark eyes in the crimson illumination. Your graduation trial expects you to assault a fortified position using overwhelming force. Academy doctrine emphasizes direct engagement, because that's how apex predators fight. Lyanna positioned herself where she could observe multiple tunnel approaches simultaneously, her sniper instincts creating overlapping fields of awareness that covered every approach vector. Alternative approaches, she asked, and Magnus found himself studying the elegant line of her neck, where silver skin met the tactical collar of her training gear. "We're going to teach you to fight like prey animals that learn to hunt," Magnus replied, and watched as understanding dawned in 3 pairs of alien eyes like weapons systems, achieving target lock. The next 4 hours demonstrated concepts that violated everything they understood about combat. Magnus showed them infiltration techniques that relied on patience rather than aggression, his hands guiding their movements through sequences that felt like deadly choreography. When he positioned Scythe's crimson-scaled form against a corridor wall, showing her how shadows could make natural armor invisible, his touch lingered longer than tactical instruction required. When he demonstrated sight lines to Lyanna, their bodies pressed close in the confined space. Magnus felt the heat radiating from her silver skin like captured starlight, positioning strategies that prioritized concealment over advantageous striking angles. Weapon applications that emphasized precision targeting over overwhelming firepower. Each technique felt wrong to their predator instincts. Every evolutionary imperative screamed that apex hunters should announce their presence, should dominate through obvious superiority. But the results were undeniable. By midday, they were moving through hostile terrain with efficiency levels that exceeded previous performance metrics. Magnus called a halt in an abandoned equipment storage bay where emergency rations appeared from his gear. Standard human military provisions that tasted like processed nutrients and artificial flavoring. But somehow sharing food in the red-lit darkness felt intimate in ways none of them had expected. These methods contradict established doctrine, Scythe observed, her reptilian features softened by the crimson illumination that made her scales seem to glow from within. Academy doctrine assumes you'll fight opponents who respond predictably to demonstrations of force. Magnus replied, activating a holographic display that cast blue light across their faces. Your graduation trial was designed by instructors who have never faced enemies that specialize in killing superior opponents. The tactical schematics rotated, revealing defensive weak points that none of them had noticed before. Magnus leaned close to explain the details, his proximity making Noxara's obsidian skin seem to shimmer with reflected light. Your target facility was constructed using standard defensive principles: overlapping fields of fire, concentrated defensive positions, automated systems that respond to detected threats with overwhelming counter-battery fire. Alternative engagement protocols, Noxara asked, her analytical precision focused entirely on him with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. Magnus met her dark eyes, seeing intelligence there that went far beyond computational efficiency. We don't give them a target worth shooting at. Day 3 introduced weapons training that redefined their understanding of lethality. Magnus demonstrated human combat techniques that emphasized mechanical advantage over raw strength, his scarred hands showing them leverage applications that multiplied force through proper biomechanical positioning, blade work that relied on precision targeting rather than overwhelming cutting power. Scythe's claws were devastating weapons when she could bring them to bear effectively. Magnus taught her techniques that made those magnificent talons accessible from positions she'd never considered viable, his tactical instruction becoming something that felt more like dance than combat training. When he guided her movements through defensive patterns, their bodies moved in synchronization that sparked electricity along her scaled skin. The human's own weapon handling bordered on supernatural. He moved blades through defensive sequences that created multiple simultaneous threat vectors. His throwing techniques generating projectile trajectories that curved around obstacles with mathematical precision. His unarmed combat incorporated joint manipulation that could disable opponents regardless of their size advantage. Lyanna observed everything with sniper intensity, her pale blue eyes tracking every movement with the focused awareness of someone cataloging techniques for future application. "Your projectile techniques violate standard ballistic principles," she said. And Magnus found himself studying the way curiosity transformed her silver features into something almost luminous. Standard ballistics assume optimal firing positions and predictable target behavior. Magnus replied, demonstrating curved throwing techniques that sent projectiles around barrier edges. Combat reality involves compromised positions and targets that won't cooperate with your calculations. He moved closer to show her the wrist mechanics involved, their hands touching as he guided her through the motion. Humans developed these methods for hunting animals that understood linear projectile paths. If you can only shoot straight lines, your prey learns to stay behind cover. The contact sent something electric through both of them. Lyanna's silver skin seemed to generate its own heat where their hands met, and Magnus felt his tactical awareness expand to include the scent of her skin, the sound of her breathing, the way her pulse accelerated when he touched her. Noxara recorded everything in her analytical memory banks. But Magnus noticed her dark eyes tracking not just his techniques, but his interactions with her teammates. Combat effectiveness multiplies when techniques exceed enemy expectation parameters, she observed with characteristic precision. Surprise is a force multiplier that scales independently of technological advantages, Magnus replied, meeting her obsidian gaze. But he was beginning to understand that surprise worked both ways. He hadn't expected to find himself drawn to their alien beauty, their deadly grace, the way intelligence moved behind eyes that saw the universe through spectrums he couldn't imagine. By evening, they were sparring with techniques that combined alien physiological capabilities with human tactical innovation. Scythe's strength became precision instruments guided by tactical wisdom that turned her natural weapons into works of art. Lyanna's accuracy became three-dimensional geometry that treated space itself as a targeting medium. Noxara's tactical processing incorporated probability matrices that Academy doctrine had never considered possible. The training chamber echoed with sounds Academy instructors had never heard, alien students pushing human techniques to performance levels that exceeded original design parameters. Magnus observed their progress with professional satisfaction that was becoming something deeper, more personal. These three had always possessed the raw capability for unprecedented lethality. Now they were learning to apply that capability with human cunning. The combination was beautiful. The combination was becoming theirs. Magnus found himself staying awake in his quarters, staring at tactical displays that couldn't explain the way Scythe's crimson scales caught light like captured fire, or how Lyanna's silver skin seemed to glow with its own radiance, or the way Noxara's obsidian features reflected intelligence like dark mirrors holding starlight. Professional respect was evolving into something more complex, more dangerous. Something that felt like connection across the vast gulfs that separated species. Week 2 brought advanced tactical scenarios that required unprecedented cooperation. Magnus designed training exercises that forced them to rely on each other's unique capabilities, while integrating human tactical principles into every decision matrix. The results exceeded Academy performance benchmarks by margins that triggered automatic investigation protocols. But more than that, the training was forging bonds that went beyond professional partnership. When Scythe moved through enemy formations like liquid violence, guided by tactical precision, Magnus felt pride that transcended instructor satisfaction. When Lyanna's shots came from positions that shouldn't have been possible, following ballistic paths that curved around obstacles to strike targets through apparent solid matter, he found himself studying her with admiration that included but exceeded professional respect. When Noxara orchestrated their combined assault with computational precision that treated battlefield chaos as navigable mathematics, turning individual lethality into geometric force multiplication, Magnus realized he was watching something unprecedented emerge. Not just superior tactics, not just improved lethality, partnership, connection. Something that might be love if humans and aliens could bridge evolutionary gulfs measured in millions of years. The thought should have been impossible. Academy doctrine emphasized the unbridgeable differences between species, the fundamental incompatibilities that made lasting relationships statistical impossibilities. But watching these three transform human tactical wisdom into alien perfection, Magnus began to understand that some connections transcended biological programming. Some partnerships were worth rewriting the rules. The graduation trial commenced at 400 hours, with the 3 students deploying from a stealth insertion vehicle 30 kilometers from their target facility. Academy doctrine called for direct assault following standard tactical escalation, reconnaissance phase, fire support preparation, coordinated advance under covering fire. Magnus monitored their progress from Academy Command Center, watching as his students demonstrated the futility of conventional alien warfare. They bypassed every defensive sensor net through infiltration techniques that kept them below detection thresholds. Lyanna's marksmanship eliminated automated sentries from positions the defenders hadn't considered vulnerable. Scythe's close combat techniques disabled security teams before they could trigger facility alerts. Noxara's tactical coordination turned their individual capabilities into seamless destruction that flowed through defensive positions like water finding downhill paths. The target facility's defenses were optimized for stopping alien assault formations. Overwhelming firepower applied through predictable approach vectors. Concentrated defensive positions designed to channel attackers into predetermined kill zones. Magnus's students gave them nothing to shoot at. They moved through facility defenses like ghosts made of surgical precision. Each defensive position fell to attacks that came from directions the designers hadn't considered possible. Security teams found themselves facing opponents who struck from multiple angles simultaneously, using techniques that violated established combat doctrine. The facility's commanding officer triggered emergency alerts 60 minutes into the exercise, not because his defenses were failing, because they weren't engaging. His sensors detected penetration signatures that his computers couldn't classify, movement patterns that didn't match any known assault methodology. His defensive systems were trying to target enemies who weren't behaving like enemies. Magnus watched the tactical display with professional pride that was becoming something deeper. His students had internalized human warfare principles so completely that they'd transcended the limitations of their original training. They weren't just applying techniques he'd taught them. They were innovating beyond his instruction, creating new methods of lethality that combined human cunning with alien capability. The mission objective, a simulated command center in the facility's core, fell to coordinated assault that lasted exactly 97 seconds. Lyanna's precision fire eliminated hardened defensive positions with shots that seemed to defy physical law. Scythe's close combat techniques neutralized security teams with surgical efficiency that turned violence into art. Noxara's tactical processing turned facility layout into tactical advantage, her mind navigating chaos with computational grace. Total mission time, 4 hours, 16 minutes. 0 casualties. Mission parameters achieved with performance margins that exceeded Academy projections by factors the instructors hadn't considered possible. Magnus monitored their extraction with satisfaction that went far beyond professional achievement. These three had become something unprecedented. Alien predators who fought with human tactical wisdom. Superior physiological capabilities, guided by survival instincts, honed across millions of years of being outgunned and outnumbered. The Academy's computers would require months to process the tactical innovations they demonstrated. His students had graduated, but more than that, they had become partners worthy of everything he could give them. Post-mission debriefing took place in Magnus's private quarters rather than Academy briefing chambers. Official reports could wait. Tonight was for celebration and negotiation of futures that extended beyond institutional oversight. Magnus sealed the chamber and activated privacy shields, watching Academy surveillance systems go dormant. External communication ceased. For the next few hours, they existed in isolation from Academy protocols and Galactic War Council oversight. Scythe arrived first, her crimson scales still flushed with combat exertion that made them glow like burnished copper in the subdued lighting. She moved with the fluid confidence of someone who had just proven herself superior to every defensive system the Academy could devise. But her reptilian eyes tracked Magnus with predatory interest that had nothing to do with tactical instruction. Lyanna appeared next, her silver skin gleaming with its own internal radiance. Her sniper training manifested as complete environmental awareness. She positioned herself where she could observe all approaches while maintaining clear sight lines to exits. But her pale blue eyes remained focused on Magnus with intensity that made his pulse quicken. Her attention entirely devoted to him rather than tactical considerations. Noxara entered with characteristic precision, her obsidian features reflecting ambient light as she analyzed room configuration and potential defensive positions. Her analytical mind was clearly processing variables that extended beyond mission parameters. Personal variables. Relationship dynamics that couldn't be reduced to tactical mathematics. Mission analysis indicates complete success, Magnus began, but the words felt inadequate for what they had accomplished together. Your performance exceeded all projected parameters. Academy records will require revision. Scythe moved closer, her predator instincts focused entirely on him with an intensity that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Academy records are irrelevant, she said, her voice carrying undertones that resonated through his bones. We need to discuss operational partnership terms. Lyanna's sniper training manifested as absolute focus on target acquisition, but her target was Magnus's emotional state rather than external threats. Current assignment structures terminate with graduation, she observed with ballistic precision. Alternative arrangements require negotiation. Noxara approached with analytical grace, her obsidian features calculating probability matrices for outcomes Magnus couldn't identify. Tactical partnerships that achieve optimal performance should be maintained, she said with characteristic precision. Dissolution of effective operational units represents resource inefficiency. Magnus found himself facing 3 alien females who had become something unprecedented during their training. They were no longer just Academy students. They were weapons he had helped forge, predators who had learned to hunt with human cunning. But more than that, they had become partners who challenged every assumption he'd held about the boundaries between species. And they weren't ready to give up their instructor. Scythe positioned herself within touching distance, her claws retracted but her posture suggesting imminent physical contact. I don't accept assignment termination, she said, and Magnus felt the words resonate through his tactical awareness like a weapon being primed. Lyanna's pale eyes tracked Magnus with sniper precision that was becoming something more intimate. Continuation of tactical partnership offers advantages that exceed standard academy deployment protocols, she observed. But her voice carried emotional undertones that had nothing to do with military efficiency. Naxara's analytical processing reached conclusions that her careful emotional control couldn't completely suppress. Personal attachment variables have developed during training periods, she said with scientific precision. These factors require integration into future operational planning. Magnus studied the three of them, feeling something fundamental shift in his understanding of what was possible. Academy doctrine assumed instructors were temporary assets, disposable resources assigned to maximize student capability before transfer to new assignments. But these three had become something more than students. They had become partners, equals who had learned to fight with techniques that married alien superiority with human tactical wisdom. The combination was unprecedented. More than that, it was personally compelling in ways Magnus hadn't anticipated. Academy assignments assume instructor deployment to new student groups, he said, but the words felt like protocol recitation rather than personal conviction. Tactical knowledge transfer to maximize Galactic War Council capabilities. Scythe's predator instincts manifested as direct action. She closed the remaining distance between them, her crimson-scaled hands coming to rest against his chest with careful precision. Academy doctrine doesn't account for optimal partnership configurations, she said, her reptilian features softened by something that looked remarkably like affection. You made us better. We made you better. That process shouldn't terminate because administrators require paperwork completion. Magnus felt her touch like electrical current spreading through his nervous system. Her scales were warm, textured like fine armor that had been heated by internal fire. Through his tactical gear, he could feel her pulse, steady and strong, and synchronized with his own heartbeat in ways that defied biological logic. Lyanna approached with sniper precision, her movements calculated to complement Scythe's positioning without crowding the tactical space. Alternative deployments offer tactical advantages, she said, her silver skin seeming to glow in the subdued lighting. Independent operation. Mission selection autonomy. Resource allocation flexibility. Her proximity brought the scent of her skin metallic coolness that reminded him of winter mornings and precision machinery. When she touched his arm, her silver flesh was warm despite its metallic appearance, her pulse visible beneath translucent skin like light moving through fiber optics. Naxara's analytical mind reached conclusions that her careful emotional control couldn't completely suppress. Personal connection variables have exceeded professional parameters, she said with scientific precision that couldn't quite mask emotional undertones. Termination of operational relationships would reduce overall capability across multiple performance metrics. She positioned herself where she could observe his expression with analytical precision, but her obsidian features reflected something softer than pure calculation. When she touched his face, her skin was smooth as polished volcanic glass, but warm with internal heat that spoke of emotions her analytical nature couldn't quite categorize. Magnus felt their proximity like gravitational force, three apex predators who had learned to fight with human tactical principles, who had become something genuinely new during their training together, who wanted to continue that partnership on terms that extended far beyond academy doctrine. The possibility was compelling, dangerous, personally and professionally unprecedented. But looking into their eyes, Scythe's reptilian intensity, Lyanna's pale blue precision, Naxara's obsidian depth, Magnus realized he had already made his choice. Alternative deployment would require abandoning academy oversight, he said, but the words felt like confirmation rather than obstacle. Independent operation outside Galactic War Council command structure. Scythe's claws extended slightly, tracing patterns across his tactical vest with careful precision. Academy oversight limits operational effectiveness, she said, her voice carrying predatory satisfaction. Independent deployment allows optimal capability utilization. Lyanna positioned herself where she could observe his expression with sniper precision that was becoming something more intimate. Question becomes whether you want to continue partnership, she said, her pale eyes reflecting possibilities that her analytical training had calculated with mathematical certainty. Whether human tactical wisdom combines with alien capability to create something worth preserving. Noxara's obsidian features reflected his face as she spoke with characteristic analytical precision that couldn't quite mask emotional investment. Probability matrices indicate positive outcomes for continued partnership across multiple variables, she said, her dark eyes holding his gaze. Professional effectiveness, personal satisfaction, tactical innovation potential. Magnus realized they were no longer discussing assignment protocols. They were negotiating terms for something unprecedented, a partnership that combined human tactical wisdom with alien capability, professional effectiveness that had evolved into personal connection. 3 lethal females who had learned to fight like humans, who wanted to continue fighting alongside the human who had taught them, who had become something more than instructor and students, something that felt like family, something that might be love if species barriers could be crossed through mutual respect and shared purpose. The prospect was irresistible. Independent deployment requires careful mission selection, Magnus said, but his voice carried agreement rather than reservation. Resource acquisition, operational security maintenance. Scythe's predatory smile showed teeth designed for tearing flesh, but in the current context, the expression was pure invitation. We excel at resource acquisition, she said, her claws tracing approval across his chest. Lyanna's pale eyes reflected possibilities that her sniper training had calculated with ballistic precision. Mission selection benefits from multiple tactical perspectives, she observed, her silver skin seeming to glow with internal radiance. Human wisdom, alien capability, combined effectiveness. Noxara's analytical processing had apparently reached conclusions that satisfied her computational requirements for optimal outcomes. Partnership continuation offers advantages that exceed Academy deployment alternatives across all measurable parameters, she said, her obsidian features showing satisfaction that transcended mathematical optimization. Magnus looked at the 3 of them, Scythe with her crimson-scaled strength and predatory grace, Lyanna with her silver luminescence and precision lethality, Noxara with her obsidian beauty and tactical genius. They had become more than students, more than weapons. They had become partners he wasn't ready to lose, connections that transcended the biological gulfs separating their species. Partnership continuation on independent deployment terms, he said, and felt something fundamental settle into place, as if tactical pieces had finally found their optimal configuration. Scythe's claws traced satisfaction across his chest, her touch generating heat that spread through his tactical gear. Acceptable operational parameters, she said, her reptilian features softened by something that looked remarkably like love. Lyanna's smile held the precision of perfectly calculated trajectory, her pale eyes reflecting possibilities that extended far beyond tactical applications. Tactical partnership maintained, she observed, her silver skin warming under his gaze. Noxara's analytical features showed satisfaction that transcended computational optimization, her obsidian skin reflecting his face like a dark mirror holding starlight. Optimal outcome achieved, she said, but her voice carried emotional undertones that had nothing to do with mathematical perfection. Magnus realized that Academy doctrine had never accounted for this possibility. Human tactical wisdom combined with alien capability could create partnerships that exceeded the sum of their components. Professional effectiveness that evolved into personal connection, something genuinely new that redefined the boundaries between species. In the privacy of quarters shielded from Academy surveillance, 3 alien females and their human instructor negotiated terms for a partnership that promised to redefine the nature of tactical excellence, blood and honor, alien superiority and human cunning. Professional effectiveness and personal connection forged through shared purpose and mutual respect. The combination was beautiful. The combination was unprecedented. The combination was theirs. The galaxy would learn to fear what they had become together. But tonight, surrounded by the scent of alien skin and the sound of synchronized heartbeats, Magnus understood that some partnerships transcended evolution itself. Some connections were worth rewriting the rules of what was possible between species. Some love was strong enough to bridge the stars.